You know, there is nothing more maddening than an outboard engine that just will not stay running. It sputters, it stalls, you pump that primer bulb till your arm is sore, and just when you think you've got it, it dies again. If that sounds painfully familiar, well, you are in exactly the right place. In this explainer, we are going to solve one of the most common and frankly annoying issues you can have with an outboard, losing its fuel prime.
All right, let's get into it. We're going to treat this like a little mystery. First, we'll get to know the culprit. What is fuel prime loss? Then, we'll become detectives and learn to spot the clues your engine is giving you. After that, we'll do some real hands-on investigation with a visual inspection, followed by the big reveal, the bubble test that's going to pinpoint the problem. And finally, we'll cover the fix and how to make sure this doesn't happen to you again.
So first things first, what exactly is this problem that has us all pulling our hair out? Let's define it.
I want you to picture this scene. Maybe it's happened to you. You're trying to pull away from the dock, or you're already out on the water, and your engine just starts coughing, sputtering. It's not just a random hiccup, it's a very specific sign that your engine is literally starving for a steady flow of fuel.
You know, the easiest way to think about fuel prime loss is to imagine trying to drink from a straw that has a tiny hole in it. You get a little bit of your drink, sure, but you also get a ton of air. That's exactly what's happening to your engine. It's trying to pull in fuel, but instead it's getting a gulp of air and it just can't run on that.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. The experts at Mercury Marine say it right here in their service manual. The problem is almost always an air leak somewhere on the suction side. That's everything from the engine all the way back to the fuel tank. That little bit of air gets in there and throws the whole system out of whack.
Now, you might be wondering if your engine is more prone to this, and yeah, that's a great question. Those older two-stroke carbureted engines, they are definitely the most likely suspects. Their fuel systems work on a vacuum, which means any tiny crack or a loose clamp becomes a perfect entry point for air to get sucked in. The modern four-stroke, fuel-injected engines are a bit tougher with their pressurized systems, but trust me, a big enough leak will take them down too.
Okay, so now we know who the culprit is. It's time to start looking for its fingerprints. Your engine is actually trying to warn you about this problem long before it leaves you stranded. You just have to know what to listen for.
These are the big three alarms. If your engine stalls out right after you turn it off, or if it's sputtering and coughing while you're cruising along, that's a classic sign. It's getting a bad mix of fuel and air. But the biggest telltale sign, it's that primer bulb. If that bulb feels soft and mushy, or if you have to sit there and keep pumping it to keep the engine alive, that's not a suggestion. That's your engine screaming at you that there is an air leak somewhere in the system.
All right, time to roll up our sleeves. Before we break out any special tools, a good, thorough visual check can often solve this mystery right then and there.
And we're not just going to look around randomly. We're going to use the PRO method, the one recommended by groups like the American Boat and Yacht Council, or ABYC. It's super simple but incredibly effective. You start right at the engine, and you methodically work your way backward, one component at a time, all the way to the tank. This makes sure you absolutely do not miss anything.
So here's what you're looking for. Start at the engine connections. Wiggle them. Are they tight? Then, get your eyes on every single hose clamp. Is it rusty? Is it loose? A corroded clamp might look tight, but it can lose its tension and let air just sneak right in. Next, give that primer bulb a good squeeze and look it over for any cracks. Then check your fuel filter. Is the housing tight? Are the seals good? Finally, run your hand and your eyes along the entire length of the fuel hose. You're looking for cracks, bulges, or any sketchy-looking repairs. Every single one of these spots is a potential crime scene.
So what happens if your visual inspection comes up empty? You've looked everywhere, and you can't find anything obviously wrong. Well, now it's time to bring out the secret weapon. This is the test that gives you undeniable, visual proof of where that leak is hiding.
We're using a fantastic technique that's been championed by the experts over at Born Again Boating. It's really the gold standard because it's so simple, and it follows that same perfect logic of working from the engine back to the tank. It's all about making that invisible air leak visible. Here's exactly how you do it. All you need is a short piece of clear fuel hose. You disconnect the main fuel line right where it plugs into your engine, and you put your clear hose in its place. Clamp it down, prime the system till the bulb is hard, and then start the engine. Now just watch that clear hose. If you see a stream of bubbles flowing through it, bam! You have just proven 100% that there is an air leak somewhere upstream from that point.
But here's the really brilliant part of this test. This is how you find the exact location. So you saw bubbles at the engine, right? Okay, now you move that clear hose to the next connection back towards the tank. Maybe you put it right before the primer bulb. Do the test again? Still see bubbles? Okay, move it again, maybe to before the fuel filter. The second you move that hose to a new spot and the bubbles disappear, you've found it. You've just isolated the leak to whatever component or section of hose you just bypassed. It's a perfect process of elimination.
Okay, detective, we found our culprit. Now it's time for the final act. Fixing the problem for good, and, maybe more importantly, making sure it never ever happens again.
Now hold on. Before you just go tighten a clamp or replace one little piece of hose, you need to understand one of the biggest root causes of these issues, especially on boats that are a few years old. And that hidden danger is the very fuel you're putting in your tank.
Here's the deal. Modern gasoline with ethanol in it is like poison to older fuel lines. We're talking about those old gray or blue hoses. Research from the Boat US Foundation shows that ethanol literally eats these hoses from the inside out. It makes them brittle, and it makes them porous, so fuel can actually seep out, and you guessed it, air can seep in. Even worse, the inner lining of the hose can crumble apart, sending little bits of rubber down the line to clog up your fuel filter or even your carburetor.
So what this really means is that the solution here is crystal clear. When you replace anything in your fuel system, you have to use modern ethanol-compatible parts. Specifically, for your hoses, look for the rating from the U.S. Coast Guard, Type A1-15. That is the new standard, and it's designed specifically to stand up to the damaging effects of ethanol fuel.
And here's a handy little cheat sheet you might want to screenshot for later. It connects some of these common symptoms to their most likely cause. For instance, see how if a primer bulb is totally collapsing, that usually points to a blockage, not a leak, like a kinked hose. Or, if you can actually see bubbles in your fuel filter ball, well, that tells you the leak has to be somewhere between the filter and the tach. It's a great little guide to have in your back pocket.
But of course, the absolute best fix is just good old-fashioned prevention. Get in the habit of giving your whole fuel system a good look over at least once a year. The Coast Guard actually recommends replacing your fuel hoses every 5 to 7 years, even if they look fine from the outside. And always, always use the right marine-grade, ethanol-safe parts. Oh, and here's a great pro tip. When you're pumping that primer bulb, always hold it vertically with the arrow pointing up. That ensures the little check valves inside work properly.
So I'll just leave you with this final thought to chew on. If you've got an older boat and you have no idea when the fuel lines were last replaced, you might be dealing with more than just an annoying performance problem. You could be sitting on a ticking time bomb. Being proactive about your fuel system isn't just about making sure your engine runs smoothly, it's about safety and peace of mind every single time you head out on the water.